So today is Passover. Every day of my life, my family would celebrate this day. It was so significant for us. We would always look back to the time of Moses, where our people were enslaved by the Egyptians for 400 years. They would cry out to the Lord, "Lord, save us." And he sent them Moses. So we loved reading those Old Testament passages every year where Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and they demanded, "Pharaoh, let my people go." And Moses would say to Pharaoh these words in Exodus chapter 5. But Pharaoh was so skeptical that Moses spoke on behalf of God or a God, and he refused them. And in retaliation, Pharaoh forced the Israelites to work even harder and to beat them mercilessly. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for our people. Year after year being enslaved with no hope. When would God hear the prayers of his people and rescue them? God told Moses that as proof of his power after he had met him on the mountain in the burning bush, that the Egyptians would suffer a series of plagues until Pharaoh agreed to let the Jews go. There were 10 plagues, if you remember, the water in the Nile turning to blood, the frogs, the lice, the wild beasts, the cows getting diseases and dying, the boils, the hails, the locusts, and the darkness over the land. And then I'm sure you remember the 10th plague. It was the worst one. Why would Pharaoh not listen? Why was his heart so hardened? That 10th plague was the slaying of Egyptian firstborns. During that last plague, God killed the firstborn of every Egyptian family, but passed over, thus the name Passover, the houses of the Israelites, who had marked their doors, the doorposts with the lamb's blood, leaving their children unharmed. And I remember as a young boy first hearing this story, and I thought to myself, I'm the firstborn. It was me that would have died had there not been a sacrifice, the blood of a lamb on the doorposts of my house. But see, in the midst of God's judgment, there was mercy and there was grace. With this last plague, Pharaoh finally relented and he let the Israelites go. The people hurriedly packed and left Egypt without even enough time for their bread to rise. Hence, the holiday's prohibition on eating leavened bread. That's why we call it matzah. I always wondered, why is it called matzah? And so, today, Thursday, Holy Week, Passover, John and I are hanging out, we're talking, and Jesus comes to us and says, I want you to go and prepare the Passover for us, that we may eat it. So I asked Jesus, like I normally did, well, where are we going to do this? Where are we going to prepare it? And Jesus told us, when you have entered the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him into the house that he enters, and then we will tell the master of the house, this is what the teacher says to you. There's a guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples. That was the question. And he will show you a large upper room furnished, and prepare it there. And then he walks away from us. And John and I are just standing there. I will admit, I looked at him and I was like, on any other day, on any other person, this might seem kind of odd, but this was Jesus. And after 3 years of doing and seeing all of the things that Jesus did and Jesus said, we knew that it would happen. Wouldn't you know it? We found a man carrying a jar of water just as he told us, and we followed him to the upper room, and we spent the day getting ready for Passover. What we did not know at the time was this was the last time that we would celebrate Passover like this for the rest of our lives. Tonight, Jesus was going to change everything. So there we are, reclining at the table, getting ready to partake in the Passover meal, and there was this tension in the air. Something was definitely wrong with Judas. He wasn't the same. He seemed disturbed. He seemed anxious. And then Jesus started telling us about how much he looked forward to this meal. He was looking forward to it, and he said before he has to suffer. And I'm like, there he goes again, talking about suffering. But before I could ask him any questions, Jesus did something that will forever change my life. He took the Passover cup, and he took the Passover bread, And he told us that this was his body broken for us, and the cup of the new covenant was his blood. And that every time we were to take it and to eat it and drink it, we were to do so in remembrance of him. 3 years ago, when Jesus was walking down to the Jordan River, John the Baptizer we called him John the Baptizer, John the Baptist. He was baptizing people there in the water, and John was a great man. We loved John. But he was odd, right? He was eating locusts, and he wore weird clothes, camel's hair. But John, he looks at Jesus, and he sees him coming down the side of the mountain. He says, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." And here is Jesus taking the Passover meal, breaking bread, the Lamb, saying that this is his blood and his body broken and shed for us. You know what I thought? Here's what I thought. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds, we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one of us to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Isaiah 53. Could it be? Could he be? But of course, before I could say anything, Jesus gets up from the meal and he wraps a towel around his waist and he begins to wash John's feet. John was reclining up against Jesus, so I guess he was first, but this is the job of a servant. I didn't say anything, but I was shocked. And then he went to Thomas and Andrew, and he was washing all of our feet. And when he came to me, I said, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" And he looked at me. He said, "Peter, what I'm doing now you do not understand, but afterward you will understand." How could he do this? He's my rabbi. He's my Lord. "You shall never wash my feet," I said. He slowly looked at me with intense eyes. Warm, love, grace, patience with me. He said, "Peter, if I do not wash you, you have no share with me." No share. It was like a flood washing over me. I was overwhelmed with tears in my eyes. I said, "Lord, not my feet, but also my hands and my head, everything." He says, "The one who has bathed does not need to wash, Peter, except for his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not every one of you is clean." Who is he talking about? Well, after that emotional meal and unforgettable Passover and washing of the feet, we got up and we went to the garden. And I was just overwhelmed. We were full, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I'll tell you what I was ready for. I was ready for a nap. But Jesus came up to us, me and John, and said, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." And he walked off to pray alone. He was far enough away where we couldn't hear him, but we could see him. He was on his knees, shaking. It almost looked like he was sweating red blood. The next thing I knew, he was waking us up. We'd fallen asleep. "Peter, wake up, people are coming." And they were there upon us. Jesus must have seen him. The torches were coming down the hill through the Kidron Valley, but he didn't run, he didn't flee, he just continued to pray. A crowd of men came around us with torches and clubs, and there was Judas. Judas was with them. All of the disciples and I, we didn't know what to do. We were kind of frozen. Judas came forward first and he said, "Rabbi," and he kissed Jesus on the cheek. And Jesus looked at Judas and said, "Friend, do what you came to do." They grabbed Jesus. They were arresting Jesus. And I was like, wait, he's done nothing wrong. He's done nothing wrong. So I did what Peter does. I grabbed my sword and I took it back, and I was going to take that guy's head off. I was not going to miss. And I swung it as hard as I could. And I missed, but I got his ear. I took it clean off. That thing went flying to the ground. Everyone screamed. It was terrifying. I learned his name was Malchus. I didn't care. I told Jesus I was with him to the end, to the death. No way was I going to deny him now in a moment like this. And Jesus just stopped everyone. It was almost like this powerful presence. And he just looked at me and he said, "Peter, put away the sword. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father has given me?" And he reached down, picked up Malchus's ear, placed it on his head, healed. I don't think Malchus will ever be the same. Then it was terror. They grabbed Jesus, they tied him up, they hit him, they punched him, they spit on his face, and they grabbed him and took him away. And suddenly I found myself running. We all ran. We didn't know what to do. We were scared. Were they going to arrest us too? All this took place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. And then I was alone. So afraid. What was happening? What was happening?